Hello everybody and welcome back to Cassie Gets Crafty. Today we have a new diorama from one of the recommendations I had in some of my previous comment sections, and one of the recommendations I had was a Gundam or a robot fighting an alien, and I think this kind of falls under that. Now, I've never built a Gundam before. This is actually my first time, so I wish I could build it to the same standards other people do, but I can't because I don't have that experience. But hopefully I build more and more Gundams and I can make something more appealing for you guys on the next video. So right out the box, it seems very intimidating as far as the parts in different sections, a bunch of instructions. But I think I managed to make a pretty good model from the diorama. I've been watching a lot of Gundam recently, and I watched a lot of Gundam back then. One of my favorite series was actually Gundam Wing, and obviously the original trilogy, original series of Gundam as well. And if you guys enjoyed watching Gundam, go ahead and write down in the comments which one was your favorite series, your favorite season, your favorite era, whichever one, whether it be canon or not. I would like to know. It'd be super cool. I'm not gonna lie, I did have quite a bit of trouble. Most of the pieces were fairly small, and it was kind of difficult to place each piece in every location, especially because it kept popping out. I did watch some videos and I did see that people would do sanding on some of the pieces so they would fit more flush, and I did that with some of the pieces off camera, and it actually did help out to keep most of the pieces together, and actually was a lot easier as well. I might have to buy a kit eventually to hopefully keep most of these things together if I plan to do more dioramas with Gundams. But so far, it looks pretty freaking cool. Once I had the body pretty much done at this point, I decided to go ahead and start working on the wings, which was probably the easiest part of building the Gundam. One thing I enjoyed about this particular Gundam kit is the fact that I had multiple choices as far as weapons. I decided to go with the one I had in the box, which is pretty much a spear, but it had a bunch of other options like a blade or an axe. But I think for the purpose of this build, I was going to go with the spear, and I thought it looked way better with the spear. So for this diorama, I decided I wanted to actually go do another clay sculpture. The first time around it was really rough. This time around I'm going a little bit more humanoid type of sculpture. You see, I play a game that a lot of people know as Dungeons and Dragons, and basically there is a friend of mine who has a character that's a frog. And I don't know why, but every time I play, I feel like we're gonna end up fighting this frog, and it's just gonna look like one of those creatures straight out of the Power Rangers, where they just look like a humanoid beast. And I decided to build a sculpture similar to that for the frog. So this is basically my interpretation of what he calls Mr. Frog, and I think it comes out pretty well. So as I've said before, my expertise in modeling isn't exactly in the physical. I'm more digital. It's way easier for me to sculpt in Nomad Sculpt. It's easier to sculpt in things like Blender. But you know, I've been practicing and I've watched some tutorials online, and it's not all that different. Only the fact that it's way harder to feel out the texture of the materials. For example, here I made some noodles and put them around my armature's arms to pretty much block it out the same way I would in Blender or Nomad Sculpt. And it's pretty much adding layers and layers until you get the basic shape of it out, and then you start molding things, like the way I molded these muscles onto my humanoid frog. Using different tools, I was able to add some details to each area, like adding the trapezoids or the lats to my humanoid body, and adding the pectorals in the shape of that they're supposed to be. Each tool I feel is really important to sculpting, which is what I'm trying to learn the most right now. There's so many different tools that I don't know which one is best to use for certain occasions. But in this scenario, I feel like subtractor tools were very useful for making the abdominal section. They were very useful for making the striations that come along different muscle groups. And honestly, I had a lot of fun building this sculpture. It was extremely enjoyable. Besides the fact that I didn't have a stand for the armature, I was pretty much able to craft a pretty good body for my humanoid Mr. Frog. I was asked before what was the hardest thing about sculpting my dinosaur in one of my previous videos, which you can click down the link below if you wish to watch that. But I think the hardest part was the legs. The mouth was particularly easy in my opinion. I feel like since it's just a frog, I would just cut out some of the space and add some gigantic frog lips that stood out. And I thought it came out pretty good once I added the tongue in and adding the different features to it. Once I added all the rest of the fingers, the hands, the toes to my frog, I decided to start working on the eyes, which is, in my opinion, the most satisfying part. Scooping out the eyeball area and just adding in the balls for the eyes was the best part. But I wanted to add extra details, so I decided to add these lips around the eyes to make sure to stand out the difference between the skin and the actual eyeball. After clay sculpting my Mr. Frog, I put it to bake and decided to choose some of the different people that I was going to use for my diorama. Now, I didn't use every single one, but I used most of them. Some of these are actually going to be in my next video, which should be coming out next week, hopefully. So once I primed my figures and left them outside to dry, I decided to work on the base. The base was fairly easy like usual, but I had a lot of scrap material, so I figured, you know what, let me use my scrap material and pretty much use my wire cutter and my engraving tip to make a pretty cool rock formation for my diorama. Once I had my basic landscape done, I went back to Old Reliable and just did the same thing like I do in all my other videos. Plaster, Mod Podge, some water, and just a little bit of white paint just to thicken it up just a little bit more. So I use my glove to rub some of it onto the main landscape, and I use a brush so I can get into all the crevices and cracks that I made, just to keep the main formation that I pretty much use my tools to cut out. Well, once that was done, it was pretty much time to add some texture, so to bring the landscape to life. For the texture, I decided to use some flocking. I used some pebbles, some rocks, some sand, some gravel, and then I sealed it with some alcohol and some watered down white glue, scenic glue. Once I had dried off and pretty much solidified everything, I decided to start painting. Now I know I wanted some gray mountains, but I didn't just want to leave it gray. There are some mountains that are stained in different areas of the world, but before I started staining it, I decided to just dry brush all the white areas, all the right edges before starting to add the rest of my colors. Before I start adding the rest of my colors, I pre-wet the area once it dried and added different shades of brown and just a tad bit of green to the bottom, and to basically areas where there would be water that have passed before. Once I've painted it, I pretty much painted the rest of my figures. Now the figures that I use, they are pretty much a symbolism or a type of representation for the type of people that live inside this type of world. You know, monster hunters. You know, I'm a huge fan of games like Monster Hunter World, different games for like that have steampunk vibes, and pretty much these cowboys here are here to take down this beast in terms, just so that they can make just a bit of cash for their living. Because what else could you do in a world where monsters exist, right? Once I added my static grass, I pretty much decided to add some moss and paint some more Mod Podge so I can add some shrubs, so I can bring the place more to life. Given my frog, the way I painted it, I wanted to give it some kind of camouflage. Once I was done with that, I placed everything in order and I painted it black. And once I had pretty much completed the diorama, it was time to take some awesome shots for you guys to watch as I finish this video. So once again, guys, thanks again for watching this video. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for continuing to watch my videos. If you guys have anything you guys want to talk about in the comment section about my dioramas, feel free, go ahead. That's what it's there for. Hit the subscribe button, like it, share it. And thank you for showing your love. And I hope you guys are ready, because I'm going to start posting some more videos soon. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned. I'll see you later.